Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. This is the Genes Are Not Your Destiny webinar, and I thank you all for joining me tonight. And my name is Crystal Melanson from Zen Functional Wellness, and I am a functional nutritionist and wellness practitioner in Colorado, but I work with people all over the states and elsewhere to help them really get to the root cause of their health issues. And one important part of that is talking about genetics. So we are going to talk about that a little bit tonight. So thank you all for joining, and we'll just wait another second before we get going. And just to go over some of the technical sides, if you want to join in on the chat on the right side of the screen, you can. That way you can enter any questions or comments that you would like. But if you don't want to, that is totally fine. You can just feel free to watch the webinar as well. And so get a pen and paper out if you'd like to take notes. All right, so we are going to talk about how you can empower yourself with personalized nutrition to prevent disease and overcome symptoms to find optimal health. And so what we are going to be talking about is epigenetics, so how your environment affects you, how problems can arise with this, genetic SNPs, what those are, and how nutrition is processed in your body, scenarios where things can go wrong, and what you can actually do about it. So we want to help you figure out what you can do if you are being affected at this time. So this is a common saying that genetics load the gun, but your environment pulls the trigger. So you are born with certain genetics. Those come to you when you are born. You can't necessarily change those, but the environment can actually set things off. And what we call that is epigenetics. So within the study of epigenetics, that is how the environment affects the expression of your genes. So the environment can actually activate or deactivate your genes. And these can be genes for certain diseases that can come about, but actually less than 5% of diseases come from single gene disorders. So things like Huntington disease, things that are really severe. Actually, 95% of diseases that we say, that can be linked to genetics are actually preventable and we can have control. So 95%, that's a lot of control. And what can affect this, whether your genes express themselves or not, are things like your diet, nutrition, stress, both emotional, mental, physical, and how you move. So exercise, whether you take care of your body. So your environment and what you put in your body can express genetics that are programmed for disease. And you can turn these genes on or you can actually turn them off. So the DNA in your body can actually work kind of like an on and off switch. And things that can turn on these genes for disease might be things like nutrient deficiencies, toxicity in your body. If you get enough exercise, that can maybe turn off genes, sunlight, even your thoughts. So there's a lot of research that your thoughts can affect if your genetics express themselves and if you set yourself up for disease. Sleep and allergens and, like we said, emotional stress as well. Because you want to think of your body like a computer. So your DNA, your genetics are like the hardware. So it's the actual setup of a computer. It's the hardware that you're working on. But Epigenetics is the software. So that's your environment, and how your computer runs can be affected. So everything that you do, you can keep upgrading your software. You can do better so that your computer can run faster, it can run smoother, and it can run more efficiently. So your body, like we said, your DNA might be the computer, the hardware, but then the environment can be the software. So not only can we help heal from disease, and we can actually turn those switches off, right? But we can actually prevent disease. And that really is the evolution of healthcare, right? We don't want to be reactionary. We don't want to work in this reactionary system, but we want to work in a proactive system. And luckily, with the technology of knowing your genetics, this has been put into our hands so we can actually be more proactive, because that's the way healthcare should be, right? So knowing your genetics and how you are individually built can help prevent disease. It can help prevent illness and symptoms. It can help you actually recover from health issues. It can help you save money on supplements because you can learn how they're being used in your body. If maybe you don't need to be taking everything you are, and if there's specific things you should be taking. It can help you understand your unique body better and how it responds. And it can help you understand areas of weakness that you have, but also that your children can inherit. So whether you have children now or you're going to in the future, knowing your genetics can help them prevent disease too, and you can help set them up and support them early on. So what we are talking about with DNA, with genes, is SNPs. So you may have heard this term before. So a SNP is a single nucleotide polymorphism. That's the long word for it, but you don't need to know that. You just need to know the word SNP. And what this is it is part of a genetic code. So within your DNA, there are sections of it that are coded for certain processes in your body. So there might be one section that they're often coded for things like enzymes, but something that helps take a specific nutrient or affects a specific neurotransmitter. All your DNA is set up in these sections that are coded for one function. And what can happen is that we can get a genetic mutation within that code. So you can see on this picture where it says GG, and then maybe over that says G, and that other G has been swapped out for an A. That would be called a mutation. And you can have one, or you can see on this strand there's two genetic mutations. And having one or two can greatly affect what that code has been set up to do. So it can either speed up that process or it can slow down that process. And that's when we can start to have problems. So having these genetic mutations are like having a little glitch in your system where things can start to go wrong. And more than 75% of all patients, it's estimated, have some sort of significant genetic variation in some of the most important nutritional metabolism pathways. So they have a genetic mutation that is affecting important pathways in their body. That's a large number. So we all have something. None of us are perfect. We all have some sort of mutation. And some of us, they might be more severe than others. So where did they come from? Well, we do not know exactly how you got mutations. But there is, one specific gene code that makes people more likely to be overweight. And we've seen this code come from generations that have been under great stress, such as famine. So if your ancestors had to go through great famine, you might be set up genetically to maybe hold on weight a little bit more, because for them that would have been really important, right? So they actually are more of survival mechanisms in our body, trying to keep us alive. So like with me, I have kind of a Scotch, Irish, and a Polish background, and all of those backgrounds, or the ethnicities, have actually experienced great hardship and famine as well. But you don't want to get down on it. Think of it that they really were survivors. So your ancestors were really survivors, and they passed on these genetic mutations, these SNPs, to try to help them and help their offspring. But some ways you do not have control of the genes you inherited, but you can help to change the times with your future children. So even if you inherited some of these genes, that does not always mean you have to pass them on. But the influence really does start in the womb, if not before, even before you conceive. It's very interesting, but the eggs you were created in your mother. So we'll go into that a little bit more. But we can actually change evolution faster now. So, when we think of evolution, it can be a slower process, but it can actually be really quick. And your health, as if you're a female, as a mother, before you even conceive, can help change these processes in your children even quicker. So like we said, the genetics were passed down from generations from your parents. And so the eggs, as I was speaking to, are actually formed as a fetus in your mother's womb. So this is just really interesting that, the eggs in my body now were actually formed in me while I was still in my mother. So you were, really literally nutritionally cared for by your grandmother as well, too. And the health of your mother before the egg is fertilized or the embryo is created can really affect the health of future children down the line. So that is why we can really still feel the effects from these struggles from generations before. So nutrigenomics, that's another word that goes with epigenetics, but it's specifically with nutrition. So when we learn your genes, we can use the power of nutrigenomics, which is the ability to really see your unique genetic makeup and see how you deliver, process, and transport nutrients within your body. So it's so important to know, if these nutrients are really being absorbed and if they're going into cells and if you're using them correctly. And you have to know this to know what's right for you, because we are all so unique and healthcare needs to be uniquely created for each of us. There are different foods that might be right for some people, different movement, types of exercise, different sleep routines, and different precautions that need to be taken based off of some things we can learn from knowing genetics. So that is why it can be really helpful so that we can strategize. And, not everyone with anxiety wants to take the same pill because it's not being caused the same way. And not everyone with gut discomfort, wants to go on the same medication or do the same diet, because we are dealing with things differently. And finding out what is right for your body is what is going to help you heal and help you prevent disease. So some of these foods you have maybe seen before, probably have all tried, but a lot of these ingredients have been known as superfoods, and they are all incredibly good for you. But one reason that they are known for this is because they all have something in common, and that is folate. So they all have the vitamin folate, and they're high in that. And that's, kale, dark leafy greens, avocado, lentils, there's spinach there as well. And When it comes to folate, there's two types that you might have heard of that can get pretty confused. There's folate and folic acid. And folate is the naturally occurring type. So this comes from plants, this comes from vegetables that you eat. And there are actually over 150 different types of folate that comes from plants, but they're all already in the active form. So we can use them directly. We do not have to further process them. Unlike folic acid, which is synthetic and man-made, it's often added to foods. They started doing that decades ago. They started adding and enriching like cereals and breads with folic acid. But our body has to actually process it into a usable form. So we have to make it into an active form before our cells can take it. So there's two different types, and it's important to know the difference because folate is very, very important for our health. And why we can have problems with this is because our body works in pathways. So just like if you were to mail a present to someone, there's many, many steps in this path to get something, from destination A to destination B to be used. And this is the same in your body. So nutrients often have to be processed into different forms, carried around, taken into cells so that they can be used properly. So like if you were to go buy a gift, you would first have to wrap it, then you'd have to package it, and you'd have to go to the post office. They'd weigh it, probably put labels, it would get sent out, it'd go from carrier to carrier, then you would deliver it to the person, they would receive it, and then they would open it and use it, right? So nutrients often work like this in your body. It is not just something that you quickly absorb and it's in your cells and you're good to go. There's many, many, many steps that are in between that where we can actually take it in and make it usable. And a lot can actually go wrong in one of these steps. And often that is because of genetic mutations. So genetic mutations can affect this. And when you have a mutation, it can slow this process down, or maybe you can't do a certain step altogether and things can just completely go awry. You keep mailing package after package and it keeps getting stuck at the same transfer center and never gets sent on past that. The same thing can be with nutrients. And a good example of this is methylation. So methylation is a type of chemical process, and it acts in over 250 different chemical reactions in your body. So it's incredibly important and far-reaching, right? So it helps you create DNA in cells. It helps with your neurotransmitters, create energy with your immune system. It helps you detoxify. All areas in your body are affected by this process. And a good example of a specific SNP that has gotten a lot of attention recently is the MTHFR gene. And this gene is one of the steps in the methylation process, which is the folate pathway, right? So when you have folic acid, it has to go through a lot of steps to become active folate. And so mutations can cause an inability to make folic acid usable in your body if you have a genetic mutation. And so what we can kind of think of methylation as being is like the gas to your car. So you might have a nice car, a nice paint job, you have pretty rims, everything looks awesome on the outside, but if you don't have any gas, you're not going to go anywhere, right? So that is like methylation, which is used from active folate. So you must have this nutrient in enough usable form so that you can actually have enough gas to run your car, so you can run your body. And so like the male example, if you have a genetic mutation in this gene, you might not be able to get it to the end place, and you might not be able to use folic acid when you're eating folic acid. And this can have many, many different consequences. Some some genetic mutations in methylation can cause these types of issues. So everything from we're seeing more connection between autism and ADHD to frequent miscarriages, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, chronic fatigue syndrome, irritable bowel syndrome, migraines, even develop into things like cancers and multiple sclerosis, heart attacks. And if you are not methylating properly before you conceive, before you give birth, even things like Down syndrome you might pass on. So it is very, very serious, and there can be consequences just because, like we said, this methylation process just touches so many different parts within our body. So folate versus folic acid, once again, the active form should be supplemented for those with methylation SNPs. So just to give you a little tidbit to go off of, if you already know, you have an MTHFR SNP mutation, then you need to be taking supplements that have these words like methyl tetrahydrofolate or folinic acid, because those are already the activated forms that you can use into your cells. And you might be asking, what if I just eat folate, right? That's already active from fruits and vegetables. Well, I would just say I have not met anyone that eats a large enough amount of dark leafy greens to actually fill their need, because the methylation need can go drastically up throughout your lifetime, especially when you're under stress or going through growth spurts or pregnancy. And it'd be very, very hard to get enough folate-filled vegetables in your diet to fill that need, and especially because a lot of vegetables are maybe not being produced from the most nutrient-rich soil these days, so we aren't sure if they contain quite as enough anymore. So if your supplement says folic acid, this is the synthetic version. Whether you know you have a SNP in MTHFR or not, I would always recommend you just check your supplements and try to get the activated form, because it's going to be higher quality, it's going to be usable, and that's going to be best for everyone whether you have a SNP or not. But incredibly important for those if you already know you have issues, you suspect you have issues, and especially if you're taking something like a prenatal vitamin, because we know how important folate acid is. Folate is for baby development, neural tube, to make sure that it has these activated forms. So what causes the illness or the syndrome? So as we stated, your environment can really decide if these genes are a problem. So you might be going under stress. So typically you might be predisposed towards a certain problem. So you might be predisposed towards depression or chronic fatigue, some issue such as that. And stress from your diet, from your lifestyle, from trauma, even like we said, growth spurts, can trigger and hold up in that system. So first we're initiated by some sort of stress, and then we have the inability to really recover from that stressor. So if you're not adequately nourished, then you might not be able to fully recover, and you continue to fall deeper down into this hole that you can't get out of, because we always have reoccurring stress, right? That's just life. That's how it is. And so that's why it can be incredibly hard that once you fall down this hole to actually get out of it again. You might need a little bit of extra help. And we can call this that illness vortex. So like you can see on this vortex, there might be some sort of triggering event, like that box on that left, that puts you down into that vortex, but then you keep spinning further down. But when you know your genetics, you can help prevent from falling down into this vortex, even when you have those triggering events. But if you do get down there, it can give you a ladder to climb back out of. So what happens when we're down that vortex? We typically decide to self-medicate, right? So that is when sugar comes in. We start craving sugar even more, maybe. We start craving alcohol, energy drinks, prescription drugs to try to help, or even over-the-counter drugs. Even moods, things like anger, that can be a way to self-medicate because we want to feel good, but it can just keep pulling us down into that vortex even further. So let's talk a little bit about some specific concerns that are more common today that can be affected by genetic mutations. So fertility and conception, or we should say infertility, really are a common occurrence that we're seeing more and more that are being affected by genes not being properly supported. And so we were talking earlier about the eggs taking in the environment from the uterus before we're even born and how they can be affected by generations. So it's really important to change that story. And a seed, just like a seed being planted in the dark with little water, little nutrients, maybe no soil, it can't grow. But if a seed is planted in nutrient-rich soil with sunlight and fresh air, it can sprout and thrive. And this is the same thing when we're trying to conceive children. And infertility can often come because our body is under stress. So whether that's nutrient deficiencies, some other sort of stress inside the body, or not enough energy, which all of these can be affected by genetic mutations, then our body will not want to get pregnant because it's a survival mechanism. If we got pregnant, 100, 200 years ago under specific stress like that, it could actually be deadly for us. So we've held on to that survival mechanism, but we can try to actually support that nowadays. And, a lot of these issues are because nutrients are not being delivered properly. And, I personally have some health issues that I don't want to pass down to my children. So even though my eggs are formed, I can still affect the quality and I can still try to be in great health before I conceive, but also choose a program for my child after they're born so that they can have less issues, so that they can hopefully not experience some of the same problems that I have in my life. But the MTHFR gene has been linked to a few different female-based problems. So things like the inability to conceive. This can also be infertility with men, frequent recurring miscarriages, elevated homocysteine levels, which can be indicator for heart problems, preeclampsia, postpartum depression, having a child with Down syndrome, or even the development of autism. All of these have been linked to having a mutation in the MTHFR gene. And so like we said, you can really reprogram your future children. We can try to help not pass down these problems and take care of our body before, during, and after. So, while we're still passing nutrients, while we're breastfeeding, so that we can have children that are really thrivers and not just survivors. So then after we have a child, maybe you already have children that are experiencing some issues. Some of these problems really we start to see when the child is going through times of greater stress. So growth spurts, even changes in their environment, in their life, things can start to occur. We might see symptoms pop up more because their body cannot keep up with these demands. They're obviously growing, they're developing so much. So if they're having problems delivering nutrients, that is when a lot of these issues can come about. Things like asthma, eczema, food sensitivities, speech delay. Speech delay, interesting enough, has been linked to a deficiency in choline. And unfortunately, only about 15% of pregnant women actually get enough choline. And other issues like dyslexia. So dyslexia, your eye movements have to do with the neurotransmitter dopamine, and there are certain genes that can affect your dopamine processing in your body. So if your child is having problems with their vision, with reading, even if they are extremely attached to screens, like computer screens or watching television, this can be a sign that their eyes are not working the way that they should and that dopamine isn't being processed correctly because they're being drawn to that two-dimensional world because they can see that that's easier on their processing system than real life, the 3D version. So all of these, just learning difficulties, ADHD, all of these can really be affected by the genetics that they have been born with. And simply knowing their genetics and supporting them properly can help reset some of these issues. Whether it's completely curing them or alleviating problems, it can be extremely helpful to get this personalized care for children because the pathways can then be used more efficiently and the nutrients can actually be delivered. And we can take them out of that vortex we were talking about. We can actually pull them out. Some other genetic testing. Oh, we're going to come back to this slide. So, why give pills that can possibly hurt your child, even further stunt development, as opposed to really looking into your child's specific needs so that you can support their body, support their brain development, so that we can give that personalized care and not just give them a one-size-fits-all approach that we don't even know might be helping and may actually be hurting them further. Another common issue that we run into is mood imbalance. And mood issues are also very much linked to having genetic mutations because that can affect how we process neurotransmitters and how we clear them out. So this could be the future of mental health and actually individualizing it. So we know many horrible side effects can come from drugs like antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds, and they can really alter that brain forever. But knowing if we have genetics that maybe set us up for depression, that are setting us up for addictive behaviors, we can support the nutrients, support the neurotransmitters in a natural way to overcome it and help reset our body. So if you're someone that just can't brush off a mood, there's one specific SNP that is really common with this, a COMT gene or MAO mutation. Those can cause you to hold on to your neurotransmitters longer. So if maybe you get in a bad mood and you feel like you just can't get over it. People are telling you to just smile, to move on, and you have a hard time doing it. That can be because you have an actual genetic mutation that is giving you a hard time of filtering out those neurotransmitters to clear that mood so that you can move on. And knowing that you can maybe help balance your system better. So there's a lot of different mood and brain activities that are affected by your genetics in a way we can help handle them naturally. So some other common areas, we obviously can't go into everything here, but some other common areas that we can get insight into from genetic testing is energy production. So if you suffer from chronic fatigue or exercise intolerance, even your mood, your brain, you may have issues that are not being supported within your production, your creation of energy. We can see into your inflammatory potential, so how you maybe react to certain foods, how your gut bacteria might be predisposed to set you up for different infections, or that's one where you can see if you should be taking probiotics, prebiotics, or if you don't necessarily need them. We can actually help see that. Your detoxifying efficiency, so we can see actually how you metabolize drugs, sensitivities to chemicals, environmental pollutants, allergens. that can also really be linked to things like psoriasis and eczema. Other health precautions. So we can get insight into how you may react to anesthesia if you need to be supported more before you have surgery than other people. How you may or your child may react to vaccines if you need to support your child before they're vaccinated, if you decide to go that route. When even your risk for heart disease. And we can also see your immune response. So if you suffer from autoimmunity, we can get an idea of how we can help balance out your immune system. So there's so many different areas that we can get insight into, that we can help alter and really personalize your health care so that you can overcome things naturally. And that is just from really knowing your genetics and knowing how we can best support that. So what are the steps for healing? So step number 1 is obviously know your genetics. So you can learn this, you can test, and you can see how you are set up. So step number 2, though, is diet. So obviously I'm always going to come back to diet because this is giving us that nutrients, right, to actually bring in our issues, or bring in nutrients to help our issues, to support our body, and it's the foundation. So it can cause inflammation in our body that can trigger genes, or it can help turn off inflammation and turn off genes. So your diet is always going to be foundational. And so you want to go by some of the basics, always high quality organic foods. If you eat meat, grass-fed, pastured, eat a wide variety of produce, of fruits and vegetables, so you can get lots of different vitamins and minerals. Healthy fat, right? We know now, clear as day, fat does not make you fat. It's incredibly important, especially for the development of your brain for children, as well as adults, so that we can function properly. Clean filtered water, because we can bring in a lot of toxins from water now, and high quality protein. So make sure that we have those building blocks. Protein is really the building blocks, for so much of those neurotransmitters for everything that's happening in our body. Step number 3 is then going to be stress. So we have to be able to handle our mental, our emotional stress, because as we stated, they can turn on and turn off genes in our body. So having a support system, having a release, whether it's journaling, yoga, deep breathing, just something that you find fun, that you can relieve stress, this actually decreases inflammation in your body and can reset your genes. And a lot of this is changing your perspective. So life is never going to go away, right? We don't want it to. So we want to be here, but with life comes a lot of stress. That's just the way it is. You have jobs, you have family, you have hardships, but changing your perspective to really, not be reactionary to everything going around you, but to be excited and to try to keep a positive mental view is going to really affect your genetics and help prevent disease as well. And then, of course, is when we get to be individual. So having specific nutrients that we know is needed for your body. So like we said, the MTHFR is the perfect example of why you will likely need to supplement with activated folate. So figuring out supplements that are actually going to benefit you, that you might need, and filling in those gaps that are individual to you. And that is also within your diet, so specializing that diet. So adjust it as needed to support your gut health, because gut health is, the majority of your immune system. So to have a healthy gut and to lower inflammation by adjusting your diet and finding the right diet for you. So I'm not a believer that there is one way to eat for everyone. I'm not a believer of anything with that there's one specific way for everyone. We are all so individual, and the same goes with diet. So finding the right one for you. And of course, finding other underlying causes of your symptoms that you might need to heal. So whether you have an infection in your gut, or you need to specifically help support your thyroid. There are many ways you can go to help support your unique individual needs to help prevent disease. So why you should know your genetics. Obviously, we want to prevent disease. We don't want to get sick, but also to live life fully. We don't want to just be surviving. We don't want to just say we want to live till we're 100 and just be kind of, crawling through every day. We want to feel good every day to really be able to accomplish everything we want to. And knowing your genetics can help you do that, to feel good, because it can help you overcome health issues. So if you're experiencing things now, if maybe you feel like things just aren't quite right, or you haven't found an answer yet, then it can really assist you in overcoming those issues and finally connecting those dots. Like we talked about, it's part of a personalized health strategy, something that's made for you and your body. And it can help you save on what you don't need. The more we get to know our body, the more we know what's happening in our body, the more we can really strategize and cut out the extra stuff to really get to what our body wants. And it's investing in what you know is going to be helpful for you. So there's many, many good reasons for knowing genetics that are going to help you out. So you might be wondering, how do we know what our genes are? So you can do a testing, and it's just an easy cheek swab. So anybody of any age, if you can get this little cotton swab in their mouth, you can test their genetics. And the great thing about genetic testing too is that it's one-time test. So unlike a lot of other things where you have to retest or maybe see if it's improved, your genes are not going to change. We can affect if they're being expressed or not, but your genes are what they are. And so it's a one-time test. You invest once and you know for the rest of your life. And you also know possibly what you are passing down to your children or future children, and maybe where they might have problems as well. There are two specific panels that I run, which is either a basic 26 SNP panel or a more advanced 55. And this can just be based off of your needs and what you want to know and investigate. But it's all of those areas that we talked about. So within the methylation, there's many, like we said with the male example, right? The analogy, there's so many steps within that. Same with methylation. There's not just one gene. There's not just one MTHFR. So there's many others, and we get to see those others as well. See what's going on with your metabolism, with your energy production, your mitochondria. How good are you at producing energy? How good are you at detoxifying? Are you set up to have more issues with inflammation? Are you predisposed for depression, for mood imbalances, and also those other precautions? So you can actually see all of these areas and know that information through these tests. So you can cover those areas of possible weakness, and then you can support them through diet, through lifestyle, and then if necessary, supplementation. So you can get that full comprehensive approach. And if you want to learn more about how I do the genetic testing, you can visit my website with that link there, zenfunctionalwellness.com. And then you can find it there through the homepage or a /genetic-testing. And that is the information that I have. So that is my introduction to genes and how they are not your destiny, how you may be predisposed to issues, but you can prevent it. And I will open this up to questions. So if you want to join the chat to ask any questions, you can now. So you can type questions into that chat box, and I will be able to see them and answer you. So if you have any questions, we'll take some few minutes to answer those. And also in the meantime, you can find out more information on this. I have other articles that go a little bit more in depth as well as videos on my website, zenfunctionalwellness.com. And I do offer some free 20-minute consults. So if you want to talk about any of these panels, or maybe if you should look into this, if maybe it's an area that would be right for you, then you can set up a consult on my website, and so that we can really talk about your specific situation. So you can do that as well at zenfunctionalwellness.com. So I will just give it a few minutes to see if any questions come through. Otherwise, I thank you for joining my presentation. If you came in late, there will be a replay of this, and it'll get sent out so that you can definitely catch any parts you weren't able to hear or be here for, and go through the information again. So this is just a light introduction. There's obviously so much to this, and if you'd like to know more about it specifically, you can drop a line, an email to me. You can ask a question on Facebook, on the Facebook page as well, so that we can really help clear this up for everyone, because I think this is so important, and it really is the future of the future of our healthcare and how we might be able to prevent disease. So I'm going to close the screen, but I will still have that line open if anyone wants to ask any questions. Do I do genetic testing on children? Yes, like I said, it's just a cheek swab, so really a newborn baby could do it because it's just swabbing a cheek. So anybody of any age can do the genetic testing. And it's great to even do it when they're children, because then you know for the rest of their life. You can have it set up and they can know and be able to hold on to that information as well. So it's really easy, and unlike other tests, blood tests, things that can be more of a struggle, this is really non-invasive and quick. And the testing turnaround is really normally only about 8 days, sometimes maybe 10, but it's really, really quick test turnaround, so you can get those results. All right. Well, if you'd like more information, once again, you can find that on my website, or you can contact me directly. But I hope this helped just give you a basic introduction, and if you have specific questions or you'd like to go more in depth, you can let me know. But thank you all so much for joining, and we will talk soon. Thank you. Have a good night.